Hey, it's Patrick again, and I'm coming at you with another video. Time machine back to the 1980s. On Tuesday, we looked at a Montgomery Ward's catalog from 1985. Well, today, we're looking at a TV guide from November of 1983. In the last video, I might have mentioned something to the effect that a catalog was kind of like a time capsule because it gave you a precise picture of what people were wearing, what they were doing, how they were living, and what kind of technology we had. Well, if a catalog can do that, then a TV guide can give you a time capsule of culture. I don't even know if TV Guide even still exists today. If it does, it's certainly not nothing like it used to be, because TV is nothing like it used to be. So if you're interested in the 80s, or if you grew up in the 80s, you might want to stick around for this, because I'm going to bring back some memories or explain some things about what it was to grow up in the 80s. And I cannot think of a more important TV guide from the 80s to show you than this one, to really sum up what we were thinking while we were living in the 80s. And to understand the 80s, you should understand what was going through our heads. So, as you can see on the cover, they're talking about a show called The Day After. Even the UPC is red. Everything on this cover suggests terror and horror, because we were living during that time when there was a lot of disagreement between the two sides of the world. So, we're going to go through this TV guide and talk about the shows that we're playing and the culture, the popularity of things, the celebrities, the comedies, the dramas, the movies, and we'll talk a little bit about The Day After, what it meant to me when I was a kid and it came out, what it meant to my neighbors, and what I think it was all about. And it might surprise you. So this is November 19th through the 25th, 50 cents. You bought this at the checkout counter when you were at the store. There's an ad on the back for Virginia Slim's Lights. Back in 1911, Catherine Brennan carried the art of sneaking a cigarette to new heights. And it shows a female aviator smoking a cigarette. I'm going to get some coffee. Okay. And on the inside, not to be outdone, we've got a masculine male smoking a Lucky Strike. Lucky Strikes again. The filter says mild, the name says taste. It's filtered. Anyway, pick up a high-paying career in real estate. Just pick up the phone. Century 21, real estate. The economy was starting to pick up at this time. We had come out of sort of a bad recession in the 70s. We have our table of contents here. An article, The Difficulties Involved in Making the Day After. Do you watch too much TV? Larry Minetti on Magnum PI. He played Magnum's friend Rick. Susan Sullivan of Falcon Crest. The Search for America's Funniest Person. College Basketball 83-84, and some reviews and columns, and a review of The Day After. We got an ad for Wonder Lotion, which I haven't seen in ages. It might still exist. It was a popular lotion in the 80s. We got an ad for Plymouth cars, and my dad drove a Plymouth. This car looks quite familiar. A lot of cars had this general look in the 80s. And our first article is about The Day After. I don't know if you've seen the program. I think you can find it pretty easily. It is a made for television film about what happens when ICBMs strike America. When I was a kid, we all worried that something was going to happen in Berlin before this program came out. But this program brought it home to people. Now, that being said, and I'm going to say that this was a very well done, well directed by Nicholas Meyer, the man who directed Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan, an entirely capable director. What I will say is it's not a coincidence that this movie came out in 1983 when the election year was gearing up for the elections of 84 between President Reagan and Walter Mondale, who was Carter's vice president. The idea of framing the Reagan administration as a warmongering administration was definitely at play with the cooperation and the sensationalism of this show. I'm not saying that to dismiss the entire thing as a political stunt, but I am saying that definitely played into it. That being said, it was still a very well directed, interesting, and memorable, dramatic interpretation of what such an event would be like. Okay, so when the show was coming out, I can remember waiting for the bus at school, and we were talking about it, and people were sort of scared of the prospect of the show coming out. After the show had come out and people watched it, I didn't watch it. We did not watch it when it came out that night. We watched it later. But I got all of the descriptions from my school friends, and it was just scary, and they were shocked and traumatized, and they said their parents were traumatized, and it was just a particularly horrific thing to watch. And this was in North Texas, so it was you wouldn't expect that reaction, but there it was. So the day after was definitely an impactful and a good piece of a cautionary tale mixed with some political propaganda. And I'm not saying which side was right or wrong, but nonetheless, it was dealing with the prospects of something that could really happen and bringing it home, not far off Berlin, but right in your backyard. That was the impact of the day after. That's why it was such a talked about. The news had a live panel, like a response room. I never saw anything like it again until The Passion by Mel Gibson came out, where we saw something similar in terms of response rooms and like a cool down after a movie. So let's continue on this TV guide and maybe cheer up a little bit. Let's look at the Atari Sesame Street Library, a revolution in child's play. So we're talking about Atari video games here. We had an Intellivision when I was growing up. We didn't get the Atari. We felt that the Atari had the graphics we thought were inferior to that of Intellivision. So we wanted a better video game platform. Here's an ad for Ideal Classic Dolls by the Ideal Toy Company, which I'm not sure still exists. It used to be a big company in the 50s and 60s. Here's an article about Larry Minetti, who played Rick on Magnum PI. So they're talking about how CBS didn't like his bad bogey imitation, as Larry Minetti well, I mean, as Rick Blaine from Casablanca. So Larry Manetti had to retool the character of Rick. Now, I recall when I used to watch Magnum that he had this sort of Rick Blaine alter ego early on, and then they kind of dropped it and turned him more into a yuppie. So uh, I, as a fan, I was a fan of Casablanca already at that point, so I appreciated his imitation. Um, Another cigarette ad, kind of designy here. Uh, GTE telephones. Telephones. We got that phone when I was a kid. That particular one right there that looks antique. Most of the phones looked the same when I was a kid. They were black or they were this sort of a pink color. Sometimes they were green, but generally speaking, we had the rotary dial. Um, we did. Household didn't get a touch tone for years and years and years. We had the rotary dial. In fact, when I moved out later on, I carried the rotary dial phone with me and used it as my phone. Let's see. So here's about ABC's Lace. I remember when that came out and was talked about by a lot of my female friends in school. Yeah, Jane Fonda's Workouts, which was very popular in the 80s. We're talking about Heart to Heart. Melissa Gilbert is in Choices of the Heart. She was famous for Little House on the Prairie. It was a made-for-television movie about the Kennedys, where Martin Sheen, I think he played Jack Kennedy. Romeo and Juliet on Ice. That sounds kind of funny to me. This is Ron Palillo from Welcome Back, Kotter, and he was doing a voice in Rubik the Amazing Cube, which was a Saturday morning cartoon that I do remember watching. They also had a Saturday morning cartoon for Pac-Man, Cubert. They had a cartoon for Gary Coleman, for Mr. T, John Candy. They had cartoons for so many things that came and went. It was insane. I couldn't even keep track. But if there was ever a popular video game like Donkey Kong or whatever, they'd make a cartoon for it and a box of cereal. Something about Dean Martin. Ben Cross. He was famous for Chariots of Fire. Quinn Harding from Another World. This is soap opera stuff. I didn't really watch soap operas. This is Sports View. Larry Holmes and Marvin Frazier. I clearly remember the two of them being big boxers during this time. When I was a real little kid, I liked Sugar Ray Leonard. And it seemed like before Mike Tyson, boxing was much less like the way it is now. Here's an article about Michael Gross and his electric train hobby. Michael Gross from Family Ties. He played Stephen Keaton, Michael J. Fox's father. As an ad for Marlboro Lights. It's snowy because this is November. So they're trying to get you thinking about, that cigarette in the cold. Maybe it'll get you to buy a carton, which back then didn't cost very much. Here's an ad to join the Marines. 3 months ago, he was just a face in the crowd. Under Reagan, the Marines had a few deployments. I think the movie Heartbreak Ridge shows one of them. And here's a business reply card. If you ever want a Marine recruiter to come visit you a lot. When I was a teenager, I looked into joining the Marine Corps because my dad was in the Marines. And boy, those recruiters wouldn't leave me alone. Once I ended up joining the Air Force, but my goodness, I couldn't shake those Marine recruiters off. But I changed my mind. I wanted to join the Air Force, and I still think they're looking for me. So we're still talking about the day after here. Now, I want to just say that yes, the day after was, it was an impactful and emotional show, but I can't help but think that, the media was very much interested in as much spin as they could get, not just for the ratings, but for the political outcome that they thought was possible. See some letters. This sequel is bad medicine. MASH used to heal, so why is After MASH making me ill? There's only one cure. The show should be surgically removed from the CBS Monday night schedule. A few weeks, an intensive rewrite, or a transfusion from the original mash of sensitivity, dignity, and humor would do it. In the meantime, Colonel Potter, I can no longer be patient. I'm checking out of this hospital, and if it's out the same to you, I won't have a relapse. Forgive them, Father Mulcahy, for the creators of Aftermath have sinned. I just highly doubt that a random person wrote that pun-filled letter, but maybe so. I don't know. But either way, MASH was a really, really popular sitcom about the Korean War, and After MASH was a follow up that came out after MASH ended that was very lacking. We never even watched it, and my parents did watch MASH. So, this week's movies. So we're gonna once again talking about the day after. Talking about the cost $7 million. They're showing that the setting is Lawrence, Kansas, which if you read your history, you'll know that Lawrence, Kansas has a history of being ground zero for a lot of terrible things in real life. And I'm going all the way back to the Civil War here. So it wasn't a coincidence that they chose that town in Kansas. We're talking about Mommy Dearest with about Joan Crawford, starring Faye Dunaway, a very campy movie. Tarzan the Ape Man, oh boy. I have to tell you a story about that. Okay, so it's the 80s, 81 or so. We had driven from Chico to Jeterville, and my parents were in a store buying some groceries. I was a very young kid, and I saw Tarzan the Ape Man trading cards for sale, and I was excited because to me Tarzan was a kids show or a kids movie. I had no idea that they were adult themed and featured, pictures of Bo Derek that were not appropriate for a kid. So, and then everyone was trying to get me to look at something else in the store. But I was like, I want to buy these. I have my own money. But I couldn't buy them, and that's probably a good thing now. Caesars Hotel Casino Atlantic City. This is back when Atlantic City was a big gaming, kind of like a Vegas place. Back in 1983, there were only two places in the United States where you could gamble: Las Vegas and Atlantic City. Not Mississippi, not any of the Indian reservations, not any of the many places you can gamble now. It's almost like the Old West again. But back then, there were only two places you could gamble. So Atlantic City was doing pretty good. Now we have movie information. And it would give you the title, the year, the stars, and some information about each movie. Like, let's see. Dragon Slayer. 1981 PG. It has violence, special effects, highlight the heroic tale of a sorcerer's apprentice played by Peter McNichol, who must save his kingdom from a fire-breathing dragon, also starring Caitlin Cart and Ralph Richardson. That movie had more than just violence. I couldn't believe that it came out by Disney and it was only rated PG. It had violence and nudity, and the graphic violence in the end for a little kid was incredibly shocking. When the little baby dragons are eating the princess's body, I had nightmares for weeks when I watched Dragon Slayer. And you would think when you saw the previews and the posters for Dragon Slayer, you were thinking that this was a movie the whole family could gather around the TV with some popcorn, but no way. Even now, that's a horrific scene. First Blood. Violence. Strong language. partial nudity. Why does First Blood get partial nudity? Because it shows Sylvester Stallone's butt. But Dragon Slayer shows a lot more than that in the beginning. I don't get it. Sylvester Stallone is a former Green Beret waging a one-man guerrilla war against police and the National Guard in the Pacific Northwest, starring Richard Crenna and Brian Dennehy and David Caruso. That was probably the best of all of the Stallone Rambo movies. The rest of them got kind of cartoonish. Let's see, The Gambler with Kenny Rogers, Gallipoli with Mel Gibson, The Kennedys Don't Cry. The Last Unicorn is another weird one that I remember. It came on HBO a lot. And it was a cartoon, but it says rated G, but it was not G. That, once again, it had some seriously adult stuff in it. Love at First Bite was a funny movie. Megaforce, one of my all-time favorites in the 80s. Strong language. Action director Hal Needham musters an elite military unit to save a small country from mercenaries with Barry Bostwick and Persis Kambata and Michael Beck. Number 1, 3 great actors. Barry Bostwick, Persis Kambata Ilea from Star Trek The Motion Picture, Michael Beck from The Warriors, full of action and adventure and stunts and colorful characters and super flying motorcycles. I don't know why this movie is not a classic. One of the best movies ever made in my book. Modern Problems with Chevy Chase. I remember we were watching it and my grandma and grandpa came in and my mom turned it off immediately because it had a bed scene in it. This is 1983, folks. If the movie, even if Chevy Chase was in it and it was a comedy, if it had a bed scene, you turned it off before grandma and grandpa came in. I mean, that's just the way things were back then. An Officer and a Gentleman. Let's see. Sexual situations, strong language, violence. Richard Gere, Deborah Winger, and Louis Gossett Jr. playing that amazing Marine Corps drill sergeant. Powerful movie about OCS. Richard Gere delivering 110%. I still think it holds up well. A good story about some realities of being in the military that are not talked about a lot. Quest for Fire. This is one of those movies that I couldn't watch as a kid, so I would peek under my door while if my parents were watching it. It was just too violent and too there was just too much going on in that movie. Now I've watched it since and it's got cavemen and mammoths and all kinds of cool stuff, but things, like I said, things have changed. Still of the Night, about early Meryl Streep. Superman 2, there's one I could watch and I loved. Telephone with Charles Bronson, a great movie. So these are some of the movies we watched. And we get to our New York area TV movie guide. There's Ed McMahon talking about the Teledyne water pick and how it makes... Ed McMahon was the co-host of The Tonight Show. In case he's not really a co-host, he was just the guy who introduced Johnny and he'd laugh at all of Johnny's jokes. More movies. These are TV movies. These aren't like the premium movies. They're all going to be edited. And back then they would edit everything. They would edit hell and damn out of the movie, or ass. I mean, they couldn't say those words. They couldn't say bastard. They would cut. Sometimes saying God would be cut out of the movie. Not to mention, here's another thing that's a lot different between now and then. We just didn't see the levels of violence that are on TV now. You watch Supernatural and see someone get their head chopped off. You watch The Walking Dead and see people, they'll like, those guys, Daryl will just stick his hand in a zombie's face and pull its skull out, and they show everything. Negan smashing people's heads with baseball bats. Nothing, and I mean nothing remotely like that. Nothing even in the same, not just ballpark, but the same league would never have been shown on TV in the 80s. I mean, it was a whole different time. Now, as the late 80s came around with NYPD Blue, things did start changing. But as I said in my last video, the late 80s were more like the 90s. I'm talking about the early 80s through to about the very, very beginning of 88, if not the end of 87. So, I mean, things have just changed a lot. What they can show on TV, the ideas, it's just all different. So let's talk about what's on in the morning. It starts out Saturday morning when I was going to get up early anyway because I wanted to catch the cartoons. So, news, a public hearing, health stuff, Lou Dobbs, Moneyline, a Western. If you got up at 5:35, sometimes a Western was on. Dad would be watching it. But I was waiting for Dad to go to work so I could put the cartoons on. So let's see. Still got Honky Tonk Man on HBO with Clint Eastwood. Night Flights. Okay, and then we get to Davy and Goliath. That was kind of boring. I didn't watch it. It's like claymation. Giggle Snort Hotel. I watched the heck out of that one. It was a wacky hotel full of weird puppets. They had this big clay guy named Thing, and they would change his face all the time. And it had in the boiler room, a dragon would burn all the coal. I used to love that show. The Pink Panther I would watch if I could. Captain Kangaroo. I watched that until I was about 8 or 9, and then I felt like I was too old for it. See, One of a Kind, World Tomorrow, Davy and Goliath again, boring. My Three Sons I would watch. I just enjoyed My Three Sons. I felt adult when I watched it. Return to the Planet of the Apes cartoon. Yes, that's a cartoon. Children's Theater, Ring Around the World, Jim Baker, Before the Scandal, Stretch with Priscilla, an exercise show. Bullwinkle, yep, watch that. Didn't watch Little Prince. I did watch Get Smart. More Pink Panther. Popeye and Friends, of course I would watch that. Thundar the Barbarian, absolutely was going to watch that. Kind of like Star Wars. He had a lightsaber. He had a friend who looked a lot like Chewbacca. It was a Star Wars-y kind of cartoon. I really enjoyed it. Fairy Tale Theater, I didn't watch that. Didn't watch Romper Room. I watched the Flintstone Funnies. Wonderama, Best of Scooby-Doo. Oh, yes, I watched me some Scooby-Doo. That's before whatever the heck it's turned into now. Back then, Scooby-Doo was something cool. Tom and Jerry, I would watch that. I would watch Spider-Man. Sesame Street, I didn't really watch. I never really liked Sesame Street. I like the Muppets. The Shirt Tales, that was a girl show. Mary watched it. I didn't really watch it. Little Rascals, I like to watch. There was a Little Rascals cartoon show with Richie Rich, and I watched that a lot. Superman, Batman, and Aquaman. Let's see. It's 8:35. We're running out of... Okay, Smurfs. Absolutely. Even my parents would turn out for that one. I'm not kidding. We would all watch that if it was on. Jerry Falwell, Wall Street Week, Hardy Boys, and Nancy Drew. Occasionally watch that. Let's see. Dungeons and Dragons. Heck yes. I watched Dungeons and Dragons, the cartoon, where the kids went on the fun park ride and it transported them into the world of Dungeons and Dragons, and they became characters. I watched it and I recorded it on my VCR. Pac-Man cartoon. More Davy and Goliath. Boring. Plastic Man. I didn't really watch it. Rubik the Amazing Cube. Yep, I watched that. National Greek Show. See, we didn't get this stuff in Texas. This New York had, you had Puerto Rican stuff and Greek stuff and all kinds of cool cultural stuff we didn't get. If we didn't have our regular cartoons, it was like cattle auctions and stuff. It was boring. Um, let's see. Hee Haw. Well, if you lived in Texas, you were stuck. You had to watch Hee Haw whenever it aired. You were always going to be watching Hee Haw. I get it now because of all the Hee Haw honeys and everything, but back then as a kid, I thought it was boring. Now I actually find it kind of interesting. Anatomy of a Murder by Otto Preminger. Otto Preminger's superior adaptation of Robert Travers' complex novel about an army officer on trial for murder in a small Michigan town, excellently acted and unusually frank in its handling of adult subject matter with James Stewart and Lee Remick. Yeah, that's a good kind of Hitchcocky movie. Okay, let's continue to read. Mr. T, the cartoon. There's wild dogs couldn't have kept me away from watching that show. I had a Mr. T doll too. When we went to Denton, Texas, went to the Golden Triangle Mall, my parents bought me a Mr. It wasn't the doll, but it was the action figure from the A Team. I was so proud to own that. BJ and the Bear, I loved watching that show. It basically was about a truck driver and his chimpanzee. Bugs Bunny Roadrunner. Yep, my parents would watch that with us. Amazing Spider-Man and the Incredible Hulk, Scooby and Scrappy Doo. And the afternoon has come. My mom's awake. She's ironing, and things are getting boring. No more TV for me. Mom's turned it on to something else, like Fame or The Great Gatsby is on. Mom's watching that. I want to watch Thundar, but Mom wants to watch. Or I want to watch Fat Albert. I want to watch something else, but she's gonna watch The Time Machine, 1978, or she wants to watch. I would rather watch this Iron Kung Fu movie, but she's gonna watch The Invisible Man from 1933. Yeah, that's after the afternoon. You were just, if you hadn't gotten your fill of cartoons, that was it. Mom was up, Iron was out, and basically it was like this: you can go outside, and if you don't go out, you can either watch this old movie with me, or you can go outside and cut the grass, or you can plant a garden, or you can do other things. That's how it was. So you watch your cartoons when you had the chance. There's your Saturday evening programs. So Saturday at 7 o'clock. See, the thing was, during the weekdays, the better shows came on. On Saturday, now we watched this one, In Search Of. It was narrated by Leonard Nimoy. We would watch Different Strokes and Silver Spoons. We would occasionally watch Candid Camera. Look at this, they had Chinese television. I would have been thrilled to. Oh yeah, we watched Battlestar Galactica. Absolutely, it was a family affair, or Fantasy Island, and Love Boat and Fantasy Island. A lot of times we caught those two together too, back to back. That was another family viewing. See. Then we get into, we're still in the afternoon. Mom is ironing. I'm out of the house, so there's Shakespeare stuff. I'd come back in and she'd have Romeo and Juliet on, or she'd have Wuthering Heights on, or she'd have Splendor in the Grass on, or whatever, just something boring. And I'm talking about as a kid. Now I know those movies are great, but as a kid, it's not what I wanted to watch. Okay, let's continue. All right. Okay. Brother Orchid, Edward G. Robinson, and Humphrey Bogart. See, now I would find this incredibly interesting, but at the time, I had no interest. I did like Casablanca because the reason I liked Casablanca is because when it came on, my parents made such a fuss about it. They would pop popcorn, they would do all the fun things, and it became like this family movie night. So we enjoyed certain movies, and Casablanca was one of them. And there's Mommy Dearest. That was not one of them. Video cassettes. In 1983, we didn't. I was taping Dungeons and Dragons by 85, but we didn't have a VCR then. We rented them. T.J. Hooker with William Shatner. We occasionally watch that, mostly out of affection for William Shatner from Star Trek, because we always watch Star Trek. Only Hooker can save her reputation and her life. And look at the drawing, and look how little his arm is. Because some poor guy had to do that drawing really fast. And he gave Hooker a little flimsy arm. Guess who? These are actors in makeup. I can tell that's Malcolm McDowell. That's Shelley Duvall. That's Robin Williams. So this was a fairy tale show on Showtime, Fairy Tale Theater. Which, my mom might have watched it. I didn't watch it. It's not my thing. And we didn't have Showtime anyway. Escape from New York, Kurt Russell and Lee Van Cleef. That's something my brother would have been all about. See, I wasn't interested in a movie like that then. Megaforce, that was my speed. Smoking the Bandit, that was my speed. Escape from New York was just too gritty for me. Mommy Dearest, there is no way I would have watched that movie then. I wouldn't have even been the slightest bit interested in it. My mom, I remember one time I came in and she was watching it, and I saw the scene where she was freaking out over the hangers, and I just thought it was insane. So, nah, it's never really into it. Let's continue reading. Candid Camera. You know, I watched that with my family, but I didn't get half of the innuendo in it. I mean, not at all. The Love Boat. Always had, like, C-list celebrities every week. Special guest star Engelbert Humperdinck. So, and Fantasy Island. When wife and mistress team up. Guest star Dynasty's Jennifer Scott. So, and look at these, once again, look at these drawings. Look how big the heads are to the bodies. And I mean, they whipped these drawings up fast if they were an artist for TV Guide. I mean, they had to get these things out every week. Debbie Boone, Dr. Robert Schuller, and special guest Debbie Boone. Her first public appearance since the birth of her twins. I'm not sure what the backstory is on that. Thunderbolt and Lightfoot is a Clint Eastwood movie directed by the guy who directed Heaven's Gate. This was like, so Michael Cimino. So here's the deal with Michael Cimino. He was this auteur director, right? And he directed this movie, and then they gave him a bigger budget, and he directed The Deer Hunter, which for some reason did really, really well. Although watching that movie is like watching paint dry. So anyway, then he followed it up. They followed it up by giving him basically an endless bag of money, and said, "Do whatever you want to do because you're a genius." So he made Heaven's Gate, which is still one of the most boring, pretentious movies ever made. Some people have tried to appreciate it. You might have seen some of my other videos that I have a Western movie collection, because I like watching Westerns a lot. I'm a big Western movie fan. You will not find a copy of Heaven's Gate in that collection, because it doesn't belong in that collection. It belongs in a garbage can. Okay, and I don't like any movie where animals are mistreated, and Heaven's Gate is a movie where he mistreated animals flagrantly. So, there you go. I will not support that movie. Culture Club. Boy, okay. So, my teacher, Mrs. Hand, thought Boy George and David Bowie were the first two signs of the apocalypse. I mean, she basically said, now, when she was in the 70s, when David Bowie came out, that was the first sign of the apocalypse. When Boy George came out in the 80s, Mrs. Hand, and disclaimer here, in my school in Chico, Texas, we did pray before lunch. We had to. And we read the Bible in class. It was a different world back then. And this was not a private school. This was a public school. But Mrs. Hand was all about, the world is coming to an end because of Boy George. If only, I don't know if she's alive now today, but if only she could see what's going on now. It's alive with movies today. Mother Jugs and Speed with Raquel Welch and Bill Cosby, back when he was America's dad. Magnum Force with Clint Eastwood. Carrie with Sissy Spacek and John Travolta. Boys and girls train for TV commercials. Now, for the first time, the famous Barbie Zone. That sounds sketchy. Barbie Zone. School is offering children ages 5 through 13 the opportunity to train how to audition, verbalize, act, interpret scripts, read, plus learn how to do TV commercials. I just feel like there's a dateline about that somewhere. Now we got some sports schedules, and then we start to see our ads. Buy out the store for a penny. That's what you think. They're gonna buy out your bank account after you do this, because what happens? See, these are these 8-tracks or are these cassettes? Let's see what kind of 8-track cartridges, or tape cassettes, or records. Those are your three choices to get Stevie Nicks, The Police, Jackson Browne. Anyway, so you go in here with your pen. Look at that. Michael Jackson's Thriller, Journey, Frontiers, Loverboy, Keep It Up, Willie Nelson, Men at Work, Billy Joel. So for one penny, so you could select 11 albums off this, and you fill it. You write them down here. You send back this handy card. I bet the postage is probably paid for. I don't. But anyway, you send to Columbia House, and Columbia House dispatches your music really fast. It comes to your door, and you're excited. Because when you open the box, you see Bruce Springsteen in Nebraska. You see Foreigner in 4. You see Barbara Streisand. In Wet. You see the Bellamy Brothers that you ordered. Your Marty Robbins is in there. The Who is in there. Mel Tillis is in there. Laura Branigan is in there. I mean, you've got all the music you love. Donna Summer, Eddie Murphy singing Party All Night, Party All the Time. Barry Manilow, Conway Twitty. You've got all the music. You got your Oak Ridge Boys, and you've got your Slim Whitman, and you've got your Eddie Rabbit, and you've got your Patrick Simmons, and you've got your Linda Ronstadt, and your Culture Club. You have all the music you could ever want. But what happens is, you're sitting there listening to your music, and 5 minutes later, another box comes. And it's got music you didn't ask for. But they're like, don't worry, if you don't like it, send it back at your own expense. So, but you're like, I just got comfortable, and I'm listening to my Eddie Rabbit 8-track, and I got to rewind it to hear it again and everything. And now you send me another box, and now you tell me I've got to go to the post office, and then 5 minutes after that, another box comes. And you know what? If you don't send them back, you know what's with the boxes? A bill. And before you know it, you have a massive collection of music you don't want. You're going to start getting soundtracks to stupid things you don't like. You're going to start getting, like, folk music. You're going to start getting just garbage music. And you're going to pay for all of it because it's too much trouble to take this garbage back to the post office. You don't even know how to ship it back. That's how they got you. So, if you have a time machine and go back to 1983, do not do this. Okay, let's continue reading. Western 500 on Superstation WTBS. Let's see. TV. Sunday evening programs. Young Doctors in Love, the movie. 60 Minutes. Oh boy, that was so boring when that was on. My dad loved watching 60 Minutes. Entertainment This Week. Lionel Richie. Charles Bronson and Death Wish, a movie that's probably couldn't be made now. Strange, Bizarre, True, Believe It or Not, with Jack Palance and Holly Palance, who I thought was so beautiful. And this is the Ripley's Believe It or Not show. I used to really enjoy watching that with the family. See, The Citadel. They always made like these Ivy League shows, like The Paper Chase and all that stuff. I never watched it. This is something about the Kennedys, which I probably would. Yeah, Kennedy. I would have loved to have watched this, but Martin Sheen looks about as much like Jack Kennedy as I look like Javier Bardem. Let's see. Breakaway children committed into insane asylums. Interesting. One of those shock things. And we got an ad for Hot Point kitchen appliances. Oh, this is the poster that freaked everybody out. This is the one. You saw this poster everywhere, and this poster scared the bejesus out of people. See, the ICBM's launching, and the little country house in Kansas, and the little girl looking. Oh my gosh, absolutely horrific to see this in 1983. You can look at this now and laugh. You can, see, this was a different time. In the 90s is when all the irony obsession came out, and but we were very straightforward and literal in the 80s. This stuff was scary. Star Search, hosted by Ed McMahon, the guy with the clean teeth. Neil Sedaka. No, my birthday, one of my birthdays, my mom bought me a Neil Sedaka tape, and I liked it. Julia Child. Get a free photo ornament, like if you. We had one of these on the tree with my picture in it. Yes, we did. So I'm not gonna make fun of this. Basketball. News with personality. News 4 live at 5. You can watch this on, you can watch old commercials from this network, and you can find this news on there with those two anchors. Oh, I think didn't make enough coffee for this video. No, Monday at 7 o'clock. Dark Shadows, Infinity Factor, Enter Tonight, Hogan's Heroes, MASH. Yeah, it wasn't a real good lineup. Haunts of the Very Rich, International Terrorism, WKRP in Cincinnati, and what's that called? One Day at a Time. That's Schneider from One Day at a Time, and Johnny Fever. What is he doing? Championship lamp wrestling, getting a hand tan, or the electrician's waltz? Who is this man? A hippie air traffic controller, your eavesdropping neighbor, or inventor of the solar-powered earmuffs? Foster kids, which way home? Oh, look, get a free camera that is a piece of garbage if you do something. Take this leaflet to your Rico dealer to find out. I remember we went to a timeshare one time that had a free gift, and it was a 35mm camera, and it was just like garbage. My dad was just like, this was not worth it. And they put us up in a crappy hotel too. But we used to go to those timeshare things all the time. It was just like a free trip. I mean, we would go and they would pay for your hotel and your meals and stuff. All you had to do was walk around and listen to their spiel about buying timeshares, and we never did it. We just took the free stuff. R Block in Brooklyn. This is some showgirl on Showtime. Find out if you have what it takes to become the ultimate showgirl. Plus a new beer brews up business in New York on the town. Juliet on Ice. On Ice with Dean, Paul, Martin. Dorothy's Got a New Love. Romeo and Juliet. Now I'm getting my attention here. Classic Creatures, Return of the Jedi. The bad, the ugly, the cute, the cuddly. This is Return of the Jedi had not come out yet, but we're getting previews of it. So we got a preview of Jabba, but that was it. I mean, we didn't see the Ewoks yet, So, and there's King Kong, Chewie, Kermit, E.T., C-3PO, Piggy. Is that an Ewok hidden there in the corner? I think it is. But Return didn't come out until 84. There's Wicket and R2-D2. Bringing Kennedy to TV. Michelob and Monday Night Football. Aftermath. Getting ready for Christmas with your Commodore computer and video games and applications that you can't even make out because the copy's so bad here. Another ad about Martin Sheen is Kennedy. Emerald Point, short-lived TV show. You can get a pocket knife for $5, which you can do today too. Let's kind of skip through Tuesday. It was Tuesday night at 7:00. Barney Miller, Hogan's Heroes. Enter. That's like at 8:00. I think you see at 7:00 was our prime time, but 8:00 was New York's. The A Team, of course, the A Team. One of the most popular shows in the 80s. Ladies Man, Bette Midler Gets Personal. That's when Charles Bronson's Mr. Majestic. Laughs Are In All Week Long. Rowan and Martin's Laughing. The Mississippi Mob Fury in a Town Filled with Hate. Can Ben save an ex-con from violence? I don't even remember that show. Just Our Luck. I don't remember that one. And but there's Happy Days. Fonzie tackles a class full of animals. That's when Happy Days literally had jumped the shark, and they're having Fonzie do all kinds of stupid stuff. Steve McQueen, The Hunter. Madeline Kahn's show, and Three's Company. Jack is dressed like a woman because he has to do a bake-off. Do you remember he made the chocolate chip cookies and he didn't have the candy, so he put like cough drops in them, and yeah. Kennedy again. Heart to Heart. Jennifer's dad and her hidden sister, and Jonathan is like, what? Okay. Cinemax. Eugene Levy. That guy. Ed Grimley. Martin Short. So great comedy moves to Cinemax. Let's see. And we're on Wednesday. Let's take out Wednesday, 8:00. Doctor Who. Tiger. The Fall Guy was the one we would be watching. So A-Team, Fall Guy. I can tell you what we were watching every night. One Day at a Time. Mackenzie Phillips and Frank Bonner as Herb Tarlick on WKRP in Cincinnati. Who's Gonna Suck It To You? More Rowan and Martin Laughing stuff. Lionel Richie. CNN had just come out. Relatively new news network. Jonathan Winters. Whiz Kids, I remember that show. They were like computer hackers. It didn't last very long. Richard Pryor was a comic genius in the 80s, and surprisingly, he did a lot of family-friendly movies. And we would, if a Richard Pryor movie was coming out, we generally went as a family to watch it at the drive-in. Yep. Bob Hope Goes to College. It's got Vanessa Williams, Miss America. Irene Cara, Morgan Fairchild. Oh, Eddie Rabbit. Joe Montana. Taco, singer of Putting on the Ritz. Yep, the scandalous Tarzan the Ape-Man movie. R-rated, full of Bo Derek and her birthday suit, and a lot of Keef. A lot of Keef in this movie. Miles O'Keefe in this movie. And there was another movie that came out at the same time called Greystoke, The Legend of Tarzan, and that's the one I was allowed to watch. Which, it was a really dark and grimy movie with Christopher Lambert, and all things considered, probably the better of the two, but neither one was like the Tarzan that I grew up with, or the classic Tarzan. Dynasty, very racy picture for hotel here, if you think. I mean, that would violate some Instagram rules right there. Continuing through Wednesday, to get your TV guides, you want to stay on top of things. And we getting ready for the Thanksgiving parade, which was a family event in my house. Larry Hagman would be commentating along with the a lot of lesser actors, but Catherine Bach. I mean, she was a big deal. Pat Harrington, Schneider. John Hiddleman was Higgins from Magnum. Uh, so Mary Fran. But yeah, the Thanksgiving parade was a much more like neat family thing. It's just not anything remotely like what it used to be now. Uh, okay, Thursday evening, 8 o'clock. What were we watching? Magnum PI and Simon and Simon after it. Yep, we watched those two back to back. It's Still a Wonderful Life. Entertainment Tonight with Jimmy Stewart. Hollywood's Private Home Movies 2. You got Tim Conway and Lonnie Anderson. You got Mr. T, Michael Jackson. That looks like Kenny G, but I think it's supposed to be Richard Simmons. Burt Reynolds, Bo Derek, supposed to be Bo Derek. Joan Rivers, and that's supposed to be Eddie Murphy. Trauma Center, another short-lived emergency rescue show. 2020 with Linda Ronstadt before they just became Dateline and focused on murders. Romeo and Juliet on Ice, just so silly. And we got our college football schedule, and it gives you. I mean, look, it's Alabama was playing Boston College, Alabama. My state, well, I'm an Auburn fan, but Alabama exists in this state. The University of Alabama is a university, unfortunately, and it does have a football team, and it is unfortunately named after the state I live in. And they played Boston College, which is odd to me because of the SEC that we're living in today. But tonight, see Christopher Reeve fly, die, lie, and revive Sleeping Beauty. He's in Death Trap, Fairy Tale Theater, and Monsignor. So he flies in Superman. He dies in Death Trap. He revives Sleeping Beauty in that, and he lies in Monsignor. So, Friday, 8 o'clock, Dukes of Hazzard. Enough said. Okay. And after the Dukes of Hazzard was Dallas. We lived in Texas, so we obligatorily had to watch that. And my grandfather took me to Fort Worth and took me to the Cattleman Club Steakhouse where Larry Hagman had his steak dinners. Yeah, that was a big deal. Webster, Emmanuel Lewis. Here's a little trivia about this show. These two, this is a real life married couple. Susan Clark and something Karis. But anyway, he was a football player. They wanted to make a show about their relationship. The network would only allow it if it had cute Emmanuel Lewis on it. So they agreed to have him as their adopted son. And then after a while, Emmanuel Lewis got like script control. So these two actually hated him in real life. It's really kind of a funny story. Benson was just, that was another thing we always watched. We loved Benson. And there was like we generally loved it because Robert Gilliland was always fighting with the German lady Kraus. And that was like the humor involved in that. Lottery, Matt Houston was kind of a Magnum PI ripoff. Didn't last very long. And we are almost at the end. Friday, late day. There's your crossword puzzle. Your business reply card, the order TV guide to your door. Christmas stuff. Now we got some slick color pages. We got an ad for Bright 100 cigarettes. Holy cow, I've got old tobacco cards for these. I don't think the company exists anymore. Of course, they're from the 1800s. Susan Sullivan Speaks. Producer Shutter. ad for VHS tapes, an ad for Jolly Time popcorn in the popcorn maker before microwaves took it over, Parker pins, if you still wanted to pay a lot for a pin, ad for Tylenol. They were really in recovery mode after 1982 and the cyanide poisonings. I remember that was big news. We all dumped our Tylenol out. A van with a Groucho nose may be looking for you. An ad for Scope mouthwash. Everybody smoked back then, so everyone needed Scope. Some kind of cough syrup. Army Reserve, be all you can be. Join an army you don't have to leave home for, except when you do. Don't think that if you join the Army Reserve, you're never going to deploy, because you will. Don't fall for that one, guys. Take it from a veteran. Fishing, basketball, Boy Scouts, and United. No, it's just the United Way. Maybe in the Cub Scouts. I was a Cub Scout. Basketball, Atari, Smokey the Bear, Think Before You Strike, and Pepto-Bismol, and cigarettes. And this was it. I hope you enjoyed spending an hour with me in 1983. And I sure enjoyed discussing it with you and rambling about what it was like. So I hope you like my channel. I hope you subscribe. If you're still watching the video at this point, please subscribe if you like what I do, because I do stuff like this, and you'll get more like this. Give me a thumbs up. That makes me happy. Leave a comment and I'll answer it. And click the bell icon if you did subscribe, so you'll know when I make another video. Anyway, I really enjoyed having you here with me. So until next time, bye.